Hello, hello, everyone. We have a very, very special treat happening this week on the Improviding Live podcast. We have a guest, and I will first give sort of my like heart on and feelings about this guest, and then ask them to introduce themselves. This person is someone who has come into my life more recently, but immediately was like one of those like shimmering sparkles when they walk into the room and you're like, oh, I can just see that this person really is about bringing their full self into the space and letting their layers be seen and noticed, and really challenging the idea that we have to sort of change ourselves to fit in a box. And that's something that I have already immensely been impacted by and really enjoy. And I'm so excited for the topic we're going to be discussing today because it's like quite literally going to be a lifesaver for me, not to put this pressure on them, but it's something that I think is really going to be the unsung hero of this season, because so many of us probably have gotten so used to this type of challenge in our life that we don't actually realize that there was a time before it and there could be a time after it. So without any more of my words, we will pass it over to Tyler, who can introduce himself however you would like to be thought of and remembered.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I am the founder of Spinally Free. I am a fitness coach, movement artist, actor, and I am so happy to be here with you, Laura. Yeah, I think we connected pretty quickly. Um, so I appreciate you inviting me on your podcast.
Oh, so happy. It's like mutual and yay. And might I say you are glowing, and your yellow, perhaps slightly orange, because I don't know what the
Like a
color is happening on here.
goldenrod
Yeah,
yellow.
goldenrod. Yeah. Shirt here. Just want to like bring everybody into the ambiance of the space. Um, and so if you did not know this, I will share that I use a random word generator and a random number generator before every episode to just add to the improv magic happening here. So the word that came up with the random word generator was confine.
Mm.
And I felt that tension as soon as I saw it. I was like, ooh, do I want to like have that word that's like not fun or cute? And I was like, no, it absolutely makes sense for what we're going to be speaking about. So I practiced restraint, and I just wanted to share that with you. And the first thing I saw though, or I felt when I saw that word, was discomfort. And I think discomfort can be a really playful way to dive into our topic today. So when you first hear the word confine, what comes to mind? And can you allow yourself when sharing out to like share any discomforts along the way in case they're coming up too? So like full permission to not make it so cutesy if it doesn't feel like it wants to be cutesy.
Right. Way the yes and with that.
Thank you, thank you.
Let's see, confined. I think I kind of feel my jaw tighten up when I think of that word. Because I'm about to speak and the jaw's kind of like, no, confined. So I think of taking up less space than we are able to, or even meant to sometimes. I think of restriction as well, restriction of expansion. Like how can I say something? How can I do something without breaking any rules? I guess I think of rules. Um, I think of let's see, discomfort. I think of I try not to confine myself, but I know I have to because you live in this world, you know what I mean? You can't just be walking around like blah 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 blah, waving your arms and do whatever you want. I mean you can, but there's a lot of consequences for that. And I think that I feel the most confined in my jaw, and that's exactly where I found that discomfort. And I can feel my face kind of tense up when I hear the word, and even before I speak, sometimes, um, wondering like what I'm gonna say, how I'm gonna say it, even if it's for a split second, and that causing tension in my body and causing me to feel confined within my body. It is such a simple thing, but we're on a podcast. I feel like that's what I felt.
Well, I want to give you kudos for leading with what was coming up for your body. I know that often it can be actually really difficult for me to get people to share anything about their body. But it's also like you practicing your practice, because what you're here to talk with us about is back pain
Whew. Yeah.
and mitigating that and healing that. And so, what I am feeling right now personally is the worst back pain I've ever felt in my life, with an extra sort of razzle dazzle of sciatica, in the mix. And so, when I saw confined, I was feeling how I'm both feeling confined by that pain, but also that restriction and sort of lack of movement is making things more stiff, which then leads to more pain, and just sort
Mhm.
of that circle clusterfuck of like oh, I need to listen to my body and rest more, but being too restful in terms of like not moving my body actually contributes more to my body's dis-ease right now. Um, and so yeah, that tension point and how do I navigate the world and the rules and all the things is sort of coming to mind. And so I would love if you could share with us your thoughts on how back pain has really sort of come into our culture, sort of like, in the West, like how
It's like
it's
so
really,
normal now.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and what where you see sort of the common journey sort of going as people are navigating this.
Right. Just to kind of go back what you said about the idea between restrictive movement and like how much do I move? I think it really comes down to intentional movement until you start feeling better. Because it's like, oh, I'm moving, but then you're in pain. It's like, oh, I'm not moving, and then you're in pain. So, like, right in the middle is that intentional movement. So, I'll just leave that there. That's just my coaching style. But as far as back pain within our, I guess, environment and our culture and our bodies, I looked this up, and over 316 million people have back pain globally. And that's just the people who are really recorded, right? There's probably more. And most of the back pain actually happens in Eastern Europe and America. So, what these places have in common is they're like pretty Western, right? Europe and America, Western places. And I think that is the sneaky, subtle reason why we experience back pain so often. It's literally in our culture. And a lot of it has to do with how we move. A lot of it has to do with chairs. I'll just start with the how we move first because okay. So you have your spine, it starts right behind your nose. If you point to your nose, everybody, that's the beginning of your spine, beginning of your neck. And it goes all the way down to your tailbone, which you're probably more familiar with, right above your butt. So that's that. But then the spine's cousin, like best friend cousin, like the cousin that is like really your sister, but that's like your cousin, that is the hips. The hips are supposed to do most of the movement. Like every single movement we do comes from the hips. I mean, maybe if you move your finger, not so much, I don't know. But everything is so connected that way. So what I find in my clients and when I just like watch people, I need to stop watching people as much. Their
You're
hips,
being your best social scientist self. Sometimes you
oh my
gotta,
gosh, I
yeah.
be trying not to. I'm like, okay. Um, the hips are not moving enough. So when the hips aren't moving enough, the back will start taking over. The back is like that coworker that wants to do everything that nobody asked it to do. And so then you have this back pain. Especially when you walk, when you sit, when you stand, because your hips aren't mobile. They probably are mobile enough. I don't want to say they're not mobile enough, but you don't even know how much you need to move them. And this comes from Western culture because I mean, at one point, the Europeans came to Africa and they saw these people moving and gyrating their hips, and they're like, oh no, 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 none of that's evil, and now it's demonized, like it's sexualized, it's demonized, it's almost taboo. So that I think creates tension within our movement. Like, oh, if I move my hips, people are going to look at me. I've had clients tell me that, like, oh, like it's scary to move your hips. It's literally mentally scary to move your hips. And I think that is going to stop us from expressing ourselves, one, but also using our hips so that our back is not hurting.
I'm going to go on a very small, short soapbox and just overtly say that white supremacy culture is causing our back pain. And and I appreciate you going there because it again it is it's the taking away of what is a natural way of connecting and listening to your body, and on top putting on top of it this very like plastered idea of properness, and it's all making us all sad and painful. But please do, touch on that point then too of if it's very taboo to move your hips, is there something that you believe that's sort of like the a way that we can move our bodies, our hips, our backs, like is there a certain move or practice that is perhaps equally taboo that actually might be something that really helps us in the long run reclaim our back mobility, health, whatever words are your words?
So instead of going technical with like body parts and anatomy and biology, I'm going to tell a story, quick story. So growing up, you go to church, like, and you're like 7, you're playing and walking and doing things. And then these church ladies will stop you and tell you, hey, stop switching your hips. If there's any like African American people listening to this podcast right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, stop switching your hips. You being fast, and you're like 7. You're like, switching my hips. That's literally how I walk. So switching your hips is like when your hips are moving when you walk. But like, that's how you're supposed to walk. So you being told that over and over again, stop switching your hips, you're gonna like walk really stiffly. So if these church ladies are telling you to stop doing that, especially in front of men and especially in front of white people, that's what they say. Don't be doing that outside in front of these men, in front of these white people. And you get taught that. So now you are stiff. So imagine if other people's cultures are like that too. Their mom and dad and whatever walk like that. So they walk like that. You don't even know how to move. Like babies, like your baby. She's probably the best mover ever because she knows how to run with her hips, walk with her hips. You've seen her squat to pick something up. She has perfect form, I bet. I've never seen her squat, but I bet you she has perfect form because she hasn't learned these rules of our society yet. And eventually she may, you know, and eventually she may feel bad about her hips or something like that because she's moving them. So I think just moving your hips however feels as comfortable as possible for now. And then once your nervous system gets used to it, you'll be able to do more and more and more. And the best way to do it is just throw on a song and just move your hips however you want to move your hips. And then you can learn like proper walking mechanics. Like, okay, how do I translate this into my walking? You know what I'm saying? And things like that. How do I translate this into everyday movement? So I am actually using my hips.
Yeah, and so it's like what you're also getting to is that, so often when we think about like personal development or like growing as we, age and go through life, it's so often through this very like perfectionist mental landscape, right? But you're also speaking to that there are embodied literacies that we can regain and that there's a transferable skill in that, right? So how Mercury plays and runs during the day directly translates to how she like nurse parkours in her sleep. Like I see, she's the most coordinated human on earth when she's sleeping. She will literally be latched on one side and then like literally like bend her body over me backwards, now wake up, go to the other side. And like, as adults,
Not
there's that
wake
thing
up.
like when you fall and you like if you're at a party and fall and you're like, oh, I didn't spill my beer, right? Like that idea of like, oh, I didn't drop anything and spill it. Like the things that she does while sleeping, and it's so coordinated, intentional, and like doesn't miss a beat. And I just always am in awe where I'm like, I can't do a 25th of that while awake. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have another thought or moment of like, oh, but there was probably a time where I could trust my body that way. And then I have a moment of silence for how quickly and how youngly, is that a word, young? Yeah, that I know that that was stopped in me, right? So I do appreciate you bringing in youth into this conversation too, because if we're thinking about, there's an opportunity here to not just address our physical or and our personal back pain, which yes, we are all, hopefully have ways to access getting our needs met. And it's also about not sort of passing on this expectation of body ailments to others when it is something that could be prevented and or significantly reduced if are people watching this more from a place of interest of, oh, how are you navigating the world? And, just for the joy of people watching and not of, oh, I can't wait to tell you how wrong you're peopling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like we talked about before, just having that sense of play and openness, I think will really help our posture is crazy. So I think finding ways to even breathing, like I wasn't going to talk about breathing today, like that wasn't my plan, but it is here it is. But even breathing, like we restrict our breath because we feel restricted. That goes back to that word confine, right? We're confining ourselves so much. And again, the back will take over. If you are not breathing efficiently, the neck, the rest of the back will take over and try to do it for you, and then you have more back pain. And I think finding what's hard to pinpoint is center of gravity. So like finding your center, and you hear like a lot of like, I don't like woo woo type of conversations, for lack of better terms, talking about like feeling centered and feeling balanced and things like that, right? That's real, it's real, and but it's also like an anatomy thing. Like your center of gravity needs to be in the center, and if your hips are not moving efficiently, like we talked about, then your center of gravity will actually be really off. And I see that as like the most, I see that the most as well.
Well, and with you, I just want to acknowledge you trusting your intuition, bringing to bring breath into the space is my first weekend of anti-racist social justice based Raja yoga teacher training. I was there for the anti-racism and social justice work, and I was really dreading the yoga part because I was like, how am I going to spend 200 hours with my body? Ew, who would do that?
Mhm.
And so the first weekend we were doing a universal meditation practice, and having to actually just notice and like breathe for 10 minutes. The next day I felt like I got hit with a semi truck, no exaggeration. I was in the most pain I had remembered in recent times from actually like practice, like what does it feel to breathe into my belly, what does it feel like to breathe through my lung, like it just actually take full breaths and actually imagine like fully completely exhaling. Like that was so painful
Like
that
painful, like muscle pain, or like,
yeah, muscle
okay.
and like all of the like my body's just like we don't do this
Oh,
because
like
I was a
soreness.
very
Okay. Like
yeah, I was
muscle
a very
soreness, like you worked
chronic
out.
yeah, literally I was just
Hmm.
like I because I was very much a like chronic breath holder, and
Hmm.
now I can also tell when I'm feeling more like confined, in a role in life and in a moment when I can tell it's like, oh wait, this is actually I'm not breathing enough headache, not like a maybe I shouldn't have just eaten 6 cookies and now I have a sugar headache, right? So I'm
Hmm.
like translating that in, and so to your point, the cues that our body can give us, like center of balance, right? Um, where's my thought going on that? Are there other ways that that sort of body awareness of body literacy comes up when you are working with clients? Is there ways that perhaps like someone then notices, oh, has something to do with my center of gravity, or this has something to do with balance, or this has something to do with posture, that perhaps we're moving so quickly in our day-to-day life that we don't realize that that might be something showing up for us.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of I've noticed in a lot of like Western culture, we have the sway back posture, which I like to call like the hippie posture, because it looks like Shaggy from Scooby Doo. Like the hips are forward and the neck is crunched forward as well. So, and you can Google that like right now as you listen to it just to see exactly what I'm talking about. And you'll see the hips going forward, which means the chest is down and not being able to expand. And the hips are not moving, they're just stuck there. So standing in that position, that's what I see most of my clients like get the most results quicker when they look at how they stand and they learn that they're standing like that, and they can be like, oh, I'm doing the thing. Oh, I'm doing my center of gravity. Because when you stand sway back or hippie posture, when you have hippie posture, your center of gravity is no longer where it's supposed to be. It's actually on your back, like your back is holding you up in a way that is not designed in the way that your hips are supposed to hold you up. So let me just rewind real quick. Center of gravity. What is okay? Center of gravity. You want me to Google that too? So if you point to your belly button and then you go an inch or two below that, that is your center of gravity. And if you take your other hand and go behind you, kind of where that is, that's your lower back curve, that natural curve. So you're a 3D organism, right? You're like this can right here. And so if you open the can and put your finger inside, that's the center of gravity. And so I think about that myself. If I was to like cut myself in half, put my finger, that is that's very graphic, but that is the center of gravity. And the lower back, that curve is holding you up. So if your center of gravity is not there, it's going to be behind it instead of in the middle. It's going to be behind it. And then you feel like you have this brick of a back, right? This brick is just moving and there's no mobility at all. That's because your center of gravity is too far behind you. Your back is doing what it's not supposed to do. And the hippie posture is messing you up.
Never related more to anything in my life, and I'm holding that's so relatable. But yeah, the feeling of a brick in my back is absolutely there. And also too, with the way that you're, it's building on the conversation, which then now I'm realizing that I forgot to bring in the random number that we generated. So
I was
I will
wondering
take a
about
free
that too.
pause. Yeah. Usually I wait a few minutes to bring it in, but I've been so excited to hear what you're saying. So it's just a few minutes. I do a generator from 1 to 6 because there's 6 tools of improviding, and we got tool number 4, which is ID the ship. So what's the relationship between you and what you're experiencing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now thinking about, talking, this idea of center of gravity and where, how you're really, I'm feeling this way that you've been building upon what you shared earlier about, like how if our back is that coworker that will do the most when we just need them to do the mediumist, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like with having that brick there and that sway back posture, we're not even giving our hips the chance to do what they need to do. So if our relations, and you've so beautifully already been speaking to the tool, if the relationship we have with our hips is so demonized and so policed and monitored, and I do use that word police intentionally, understanding that it is a problematic word and construct, that then is making setting us up to have a very confined and also disconnected relationship with our back and our mobility and our hips, because we're not actually being given access to spaces and places where sort of each of our body parts can have access to the role that they were meant to have, and that we can then also have the self literacy to know when things start to just feel a little raggedy versus having to wait till you're like basically immobile and calling and finding 88-year-old chiropractor just me each morning to be like, please, any relief. Also, thank you for being randomly open early on a Saturday morning because that's your work hours, So all the things. So when you're hearing though this idea of identifying the relationship between, like the experience that we're having and sort of like where that all stems from, does anything come up when you're thinking about, this sort of, I won't say antidote, but like how we then, what do we do with this awareness of
Right.
where it comes from, right? Is there anything else that you want to sort of name a relationship with, Perhaps that's something like our youthfulness, playing, having fun, like something that if we were able to sort of redefine a relationship with that, then being able to implement changes in how we navigate and move our bodies on a daily basis might seem more accessible than this idea of like, oh, you have to have 6 hours of gym time a day to go
Mm,
become
mm,
Hercules,
mm.
shit, where it's just not accessible or what people desire doing with their life.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because this idea of being more playful, because I have clients, okay, antidote. I have clients who are playful, like they want to go do all this stuff. They want to, they're active, they want to, and then their back heart hurts, and then it keeps them from doing the things that they want to do. Really, and they get really bummed out about it. But then on the flip side, when they're kind of like working, a lot of my clients work from home. I suggest I'm like, why don't you take a nap? Sometimes, like, you know what I mean, like, just it's okay to take a nap, like just conversation, just like random client conversation. And they're like, I can't just take a nap. I'm like, why? And I'm like, oh, I just can't. Like, no, not any real reason why. And so yes, they're active and they like quote unquote play, but their mindset is not playful. Like they're telling themselves like they cannot take a 15-minute nap, even though they want to, because of like no good reason at all. I can see if you like got all the stuff to do, you got meeting, you like you can't, but you can. You work from home. Who's
Shit,
going to
so it's
watch you?
like
Who's going to
their
stop you?
internalized confinement from outside society is then now confining themselves and not actually allowing the room to be mentally playful too. I will
Yeah,
also self-identify that now. I like as you share it that way, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see that in me too, of the moments where I feel this tension, right, of my body and my spirit being like, yeah, we actually like want to play and do shit, and then I'm like, oh, why is that happening? And then it's just like, oh, because your brain is like, oh, stare at that wrapper that shouldn't be on the corner of the table for 35 minutes and get hyperfixated on it, and not just like playfully go pick it up and get on with your life. So
yeah, because your body and your brain will compensate for things, just like how your back compensates for certain things. I think our brains do the same thing. So we start daydreaming, we start, staring at a wall, we start scrolling on Instagram, we start doing these things that our body is telling us, like, hey, go be creative, go do this, go do that. And I mean, I go through it too, right? Like just being someone who's in business, like I'm like, oh, I have these things to do. It takes an essence of discipline for adults to play. It's a practice, and I think I've heard you say that before too. It's definitely like a practice that I believe in just as much as yoga, just as much as working out, just as much as meditation, whatever. Play needs to be a practice and a discipline to adjust your mindset. And I think when you do that, one, you allow yourself to breathe. Two, there's been these conversations going around, right, about how emotions live in the body. I don't think that's an odd thing for someone to hear at this moment. Um, when you release certain things, your body will relax and the tension goes away. So, for example, I used to be a really tense person. I probably still am a tense person, which is why I'd like to help other people not be tense people. Um, and I was when was this? I played a really hard role in a play, and it took me. And before this, I didn't see myself as like the angry Black woman, that trope that you hear about. I didn't. I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, no, I'm not. And after this play, it showed me that actually I do know what that feels like to be this angry Black woman, but I still denied it. I was like, no, 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 no. Ain't got time for that. Nope. In denial. And one time I was in my car and I was just like, you know what? I am an angry Black woman. And my traps, my upper traps where my neck is, just released. I can still remember how it felt to just like to have it melt down into my shoulders. So my shoulders came down, and then my shoulders came down. So my back released, and it was a ripple effect. And that was just from having experiencing emotion and allowing it to move through me.
Thank you for sharing and acknowledging the vulnerability in that too, right? Because I imagine that when you're feeling that obvious to you, right? Like that noticeable and identifiable of a shift too, that also then opens up more potential for the emotions and the energetic sort of layers that were causing and leading up to that tension to be happening too. So I just want to thank you for sharing that and acknowledging too that that tension wasn't there for nothing, right?
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
and that as it comes and goes throughout life too, that there's valid reasons for why it's there. Um and and so being someone, and again, this you can always be like, no, how you're just like projecting out, but being someone who is in a space of service for helping people navigate their tension and how it's showing up in their body, and just really equipping people to be able to actualize the dreams they have for their life, like playing with their kids, doing that hike that they saw on Pinterest 6 years ago that they've always wanted to, but their back hurts, um, and then acknowledging that you're navigating your own things too, right? Not every day is a day where you're like, my spine is flubber. It always turns every, like whatever, whatever's coming up in those layers too. Are there any ways, like certain practices that you lean onto the most, or was it you love having fun and play? Or like, is there anything that if you were like, would feel so jazzed if someone was listening to this and let you know, hey, I did that thing that you mentioned? Like, what would some of those things be, if there are any?
um, well, it's hard for me to talk about this because it's such an obscure concept, but have you heard of Alexander technique?
I have, but that doesn't mean I remember where or how I listened to it. But yes.
I figured you had because you're in theater. So it's a like performing arts body work thing. And it's very expansive. I'm not going to get into it right now, but it's a huge part of my coaching style, even if I never say exactly what it is, and a huge part of my own practice. So there's an exercise called constructive rest, and you lie on your back, and it's part of the program I offer online right now. You lie on your back and your knees up, and you just kind of let your body sink into the ground. And there's different exercises you can do within this exercise, but just doing that for yourself and allowing yourself to explore, like, where am I holding tension? What part feels tight, like, and just putting some awareness in that area and just breathing into it, like not stretching, not moving, and you will feel the shifts in your body. It's crazy, like, because in that specific position, um you have less tension. That's just the way that position works. So the way, like, how you interact with gravity and everything. So that is one of my go-tos. If I'm feeling tense, even if I'm feeling tense emotionally, like I had a tension headache a few weeks ago because I had some rough things happen. And I just like lie down in the middle of the floor. You can do this anywhere. I love it because you could do it anywhere. And this is another aspect of play. Like if you are in the office and you need to do it, you might like look crazy or whatever lying down in the middle of the floor, but oh well, don't you feel better, you know what I mean? Maybe somebody can join you. So I think that's one of my favorite exercises because you can literally do it anywhere, no matter what, unless you're on an airplane, I guess.
Hey, if the
um
seatbelt sign is off, then maybe you get like 30 seconds in the aisle. You just gotta get
yeah,
up to it.
they'll kick you off the plane.
Yeah. Be like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had landed. I was just ready to
I'm
collect
just
my
doing
bag
my
when it fell out of
constructive
the
rest.
cabinet. Yeah. No, and thank you for sharing something that is accessible in terms of it, that you can take that with you, right? That's like a transferable body moment. But also with sharing the Alexander technique, I was reminded of social presencing theater, and when I had my first class with that, really it's this practice of your body leading you through space and time, and perhaps if there's a facilitator, they're giving a cue or a prompt, something like you're exploring a city for the first time, right? And it's less about what your brain thinks that looks like and moving your body through that, but your body really leading of like, and discovering through that, oh well, what type of city is it? Like, am I carrying a
Mhm.
bag or not? Or am I on a Segway? How do I show that I'm on a Segway with that one? Whatever that is. What ended up happening to me after that class was, as I was asking myself, okay, so how else can I make room for this in my life? It became, I sort of had this mashup with breath work come to me, where now my go-to practice of, like trying to keep any amount of shits together for myself, is, you know, taking this full breath, asking my body where it's feeling the most tension, or like essentially those shittiest, right? Noticing that, and then on the next breath asking where in my body is it the lightest, do I have the most capacity, and then
Mhm.
with each breath asking that place that has capacity to send some energy or assistance to the other place, and feeling that tension melt away, feeling all of that shift, and then allowing this and then it's like my brain is offline, like there's few prompts to get it started, but then just allowing, it's like this whole like bodily network of saying like, oh okay, here's this shift, oh okay, I can take some of this, right, and allowing what already exists as an internal ecosystem exist and have space to. And so I was just really reminded of that,
That's
as
constructive
sharing how.
rest. I mean, that is constructive rest. You don't have to necessarily lie down on the ground to do it. That's just, eventually I think there's a muscle memory that happens when you do that practice. And then when you're standing, walking, whatever, sitting and doing whatever, it kind of just your body kind of remembers it. So that sounds like constructive rest to me.
Well, I think that will now add that, like allow myself to add that lens to looking at it too, right? And and what you're sharing out too, this sort of second half of our conversation is really just giving me the sense of, again, it's not what you're able to support people through is not about just learning one right way to do things, but really how can playfulness lead to this path of curiosity, of
Mhm.
really just asking like, how might I do this being life and mobility and moving, if my body and I were actually part of the decision making process, like how would we navigate walking into the office holding our briefcase every day? Oh shit, I don't want a fucking briefcase, let's get a book bag so it's distributed a little more, right? Or some of these decisions that yeah, that may have become as routine as feeling our back pain and thinking that it always has to be there.
Mhm.
And yeah, perhaps sort of reclaiming the idea that these smaller shifts, when consistently implemented, can make us feel less raggedy.
Habits,
Yeah.
habits,
Oh,
right?
she brought out the H word. Oh,
Yeah. I
I was
mean,
just dropping
yeah.
all the F bombs earlier. You brought up the habit. Whew.
The H word, yes, habits. That's what you're talking about, right? So, and I can get that's a whole nother conversation. Really, talk. I can go on and on about how habits work and how our brains adapt to them.
That
Um,
could be episode 2. You can
that
always
could be
come.
episode
I'll
two
have
for
you. We'll
sure.
happily have you back.
For sure, habits are something else, especially as a fitness coach. Getting people. That's why I try not to promote workouts. I
Hmm.
try to have people take movement breaks. Maybe that's an hour, maybe it's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Whatever. But yeah, so movement breaks I think is one way to break up the sitting or the standing for a long period of time. Like you mentioned that's something you and your daughter like to do, is like have little movement sessions, and that's a habit that will definitely help your pain, like move in the way that you feel comfortable enough to move. It doesn't have to be difficult every time you intentionally move your body. It doesn't have to be like a huge effort, I don't
Mm,
think.
that was the exact line that there's always one line with every guest where it's just like, for me, and that's it. And that was my version that I mentioned earlier about, even starting a teacher to be like 200 hours on body, oh fuck, because I had been taught and have learned over life that any intentional time with my body was going to be really exertion based. Like it had to be about like either fixing something or proving something or undoing all the things that were wrong with me, like, and so the idea that my body, well, one of that I could want to spend time with my body, who knew that
Mhm.
spending time with my body didn't have to be like getting teeth pulled. and that it actually could facilitate moments that do make life more livable, like would not have been like I would have failed that quiz a few years ago. So I just really appreciate you sharing it in that way, because that's that reminder that I need too, is that if one of my life goals is to be able to feel like I'm quote living out loud, right? And like experiencing what life is happening, staying sort of online with myself, right? And not feeling like disconnection and avoiding things is the only option, then
Hmm.
taking those movement breaks is a really accessible way to be navigating that. So thank you
Yeah.
for that.
My pleasure. I'm so happy that helped. My little fitness coach heart is very
Oh
full from.
yeah, I feel like this has been a session in so many ways for me. So send me your invoice, right? And on that note though, of being able to support other people, I would really love to intentionally invite you into like sharing more about your world in that lens. How are you
Mhm.
supporting people? How can they connect with you? What would you really love to share out with us, right? And again, thank you for all the sharing you've already done, but really, yeah, wanting to allow you the space and time to have sort of the drawbridge thing of like, oh, here's how you can and can't. So like, I won't be giving my full home address, and I don't want you to send me, muffins, but here's how you can ask me. Like, it's that time in our
Yeah,
episode.
no, my fiance would be really mad at me if I gave him our
Yeah.
address.
Yes, yeah, no. This
They're
example
like,
of what we
Ty,
don't
really?
need to
Why'd you do that?
do. Yeah.
So yes, you can definitely work with me, and I have. So let me just go back to the Western thing real quick. So I have something for y'all because we sit so much, and I'm not going to tell you not to sit. I'm not going to tell you how long to sit, because sitting is sitting. I'm sitting right now, and the chair wasn't always there, but it will be here forever. The chair was a thing that aristocrats, wow, I watched too much Disney.
No,
Aristocrats,
we're gonna go through Aristocats because that visual is great. But continue, I'm here with it.
aristocrats
Let's
used,
write that number and we'll perform it on the next episode. Okay.
yeah,
Back to you.
aristocrats used to to I don't know why they use chairs, but I guess to be comfortable, to not sit on the ground and not get dirty. But that was rich people thing. And so it became, now it's a staple all over the world, right? So chairs wasn't always here. And our body, I don't think, has adapted or evolved to even incorporate chairs in our everyday life. But there is a special way that you can sit. And when you sit, I say special way because that's what my clients call it. It's really the right way to sit properly, efficiently, and not only reduce your back pain while you sit or just going further, but it is can be seen as an exercise. You can actually strengthen your back, mobilize your hips while you sit. So you don't have to pop a bunch of Advil or see your 88-year-old chiropractor every week in order to be or feel functional. So I would invite y'all to click the link and download this training I have, How to Sit Without Back Pain. It's really accessible. It's not super long. It's a couple videos of just showing you exactly how to sit functionally. Like it's kind of, it's a little technical, but understandable, so that you're not sitting on your tailbone and your tailbone is sitting above the seat. And that way your back, so your back has certain muscles in it that actually cannot be strengthened without having this like perfect posture almost. So in order to strengthen those muscles, you need to have this posture. So this sitting will give you that posture to strengthen these specific muscles in your back.
So it's like the have your cake and eat it too sitting and back muscle building and aristocratic. I'm kidding. No. Well,
Yeah.
and well, one, I am so excited. So I will not only be downloading this myself and totally doing it and then like sharing it back out with everyone. But I just my no random facts. I call it Lori Jeopardy. The things I remember, which are usually never helpful except for random moments like this. I actually remember learning in middle school, which means we can question it because that was early 2000s in
Mhm.
public education. Who knows who was writing those textbooks, right? Just want that disclaimer, but that the invention of the chair and the idea of aristocrats using them was actually to make them seem higher and closer to God, to then
Oh,
reinforce their authority, because of course I would be higher up than peasant folk, right? And that, so it was like short comfort came with, and that's where like the how they sort of dressed the chair became more sophisticated and very expensive linens and jewels and all the things, right? But the intentional first thought was, oh well, if I'm above you, then it reinforces the rules and play, the confinement. Look at that, full circle back
wow.
around.
It's not even practical
Confinement
then.
I'm in
So
place.
chairs aren't even practical.
Yeah.
I thought it
Yes,
was like
it
a
was
practical
a way
thing.
to be more pettily dehumanizing. And yes, so
Well, we gotta
take
learn how to
this
sit in
out.
them, I guess.
So
And
we're not going to say go burn your chairs, right? Because again, there's a time and a place and all the things.
white supremacy,
And yeah, and also,
chairs.
yeah, and also give your chairs a side eye sometimes, perhaps as a takeaway.
Yeah, sit on the floor, sit on a stability ball. Like if sitting on the floor is hard, we could work on that. So that you don't necessarily need to depend on the chair. Like the chair can just be an option. I wish y'all could see what kind of chair I'm sitting on right now. It's like a little tiny fold kind of chair, but I can't show you because it's the podcast. But
Well, if you feel so inclined, you can share a picture of it, and I will include that in our, like other medias about the
oh
episode.
yeah, that's a good
And
idea.
we can chat out your chair and be like, this chair doesn't deserve the side eye. This chair is working really hard to
And
work
it was
with
like
you.
$3 at the dollar store.
Oh, I like $3 anythings, but that's another episode about
I know it's a whole nother episode.
Okay, so what we're identifying is that Tyler and I are going to have a recurring series
Yeah,
about the things that come up in the previous episodes that now become their own episode.
that's hilarious.
Well, I do want to make sure I super, super, super thank you for everything you have shared. And when you mentioned earlier, like click the link, what Tyler's referencing is that I will have it in the show notes. It will also be linked in um, on our both of our social medias, and they can find you on Instagram. Where can you share your
It's finally free. It's like finally free, but with the
But
SP
spine, yeah.
because for your spine.
In Improviding Life, we love a wordplay and a mashup.
Right.
You gotta make your own language to talk about the world you're co-creating and constructing. So we're here for that. Um, and well, let me pause. Was there anything else that you'd like to share, just in
Um,
general, or like
yeah, I
anything?
just want to say, I know the pain is hard to deal with. I've dealt with certain types of pain as well, but like pain, one is just information. And two, it's not who you are. It's not something that is your back pain. It's not your pain. It's not, you don't have to, we don't have to identify with these pains that we have. So I just want to put that out there that it's something you can do about it. And taking this training is one of the first steps that you can take to implement a habit that will get you out of that realm of owning this pain that's been with you for so long.
Mm. That was really poetic and beautiful and needed. I really appreciate you, Tyler. And one
I
thing that
appreciate you
I
too.
have, I think you claimed, maybe questionably so, is my inability to have sort of clean, tidy, cute, succinct endings to any type of call interview. So instead, what I like to do is ask people to do something random, right? You're an improv person, you'll get, this won't be a surprise, or you'll be like, that might have been the fourth weirdest thing that's ever happened. So you know what? Now I'm thinking about that chair you were talking about, this cool mystery chair. I haven't even seen it yet, everybody. And so, for a moment, we're gonna imagine that we're your chair, right? I have my mental image of what I think it is. You know what it is, and we're each just gonna make a sound of like how your chair is gonna feel when you get off of it,
Mm.
and then when it sees you again the next time, and it's just like, oh, I'm so excited. Where have you been? Right? Like, what do we think your chair's experience was of this episode? And we're just gonna each make a sound. What does a chair sound like? I don't know. That's gonna be how we end our time together as
Okay,
we're
I like it.
providing
I
this
like it.
life.
I think I got a little scene in my head.
Great, good. I'm all yours. There you go.
Okay, so I'm getting off the chair. Ah,
All right, and time has passed, right? SpongeBob, 2 hours later. And now your chair's seeing you. How's it greeting you?
I'm sitting on the chair.
I just really delight you humoring me. This is great. So what was coming up for me was when you got off and be like, wait, don't go. We weren't finished. This was such a good conversation, right? Because your chair was like, oh shit, I was brought into the space. I'm just so excited, right? So then for my 2 hours later, when he comes back, your chair is actually just medium light salty of like you really like left without having this conversation. So instead of a sound, it's really giving you its own side eye of like, we might need to set some boundaries of how you come and go with me. So I just wanted to leave you with that thought that, your chair might be in the land of Toy Story somewhere where it might be slightly living where it's like, I actually wanted you in the space a little longer, Tyler. Geez. Not to put that on you,
Oh,
but just something to consider. Maybe
that's true. I
maybe
went
your
the
chair
other
wants
way,
to
and
be
my chair
embraced.
was like happy to get some alone time.
um, and the thing is we may not ever know. Your chair might just be like, both of y'all are
It just
wrong.
made a noise just now, actually. I just leaned back and like,
Yeah, I was like, can you not speak for me? So
yeah.
here we go. That's what we're learning. Our relationship with our chairs can evolve, and so can our relationship with our back and our hips.
Hey,
So it has been the truest delight, Tyler. I so appreciate you. And as always, have a razzle dazzle day. And if that's not accessible, you can put an F on front and have a frazzle dazzle day. See you next time.
bye.